It's been an interesting month for me. Originally, I planned on making a video talking about Hitman and how that game trains you to the point of mastery, following it up with a video talking about replayability in Resident Evil games. But before I could do either of those, my PC's motherboard decided to commit die, sending both of those videos back quite a ways. So far back, in fact, the Payday 3's 23rd update dropped before I could finish either of them. Since it's here anyway, why don't I go over it? The main things Update 23 does revolve around the Loadout UI and Weapon UX, adding in some more menus to the main menu that really should consolidate some of these buttons soon, and another heist rework that I classify more as a revamp than a full-on rework on the same scale as No Rest and Turbid Station. Not that the efforts aren't appreciated. Being the guy who got popular through my Heist Improvement series, it's only fitting I begin with the Touch the Sky revamp. Instead of going through notes of what's changed, I figure I'll go through the adjusted structure of the heist, as the rework starts off rather differently to the original on a whole new rooftop section of the penthouse Mason Laurent is in. This area isn't of much consequence and loud, but where it opens things up is in stealth, since you have two methods to go down. Either mask up and zipline down, opening up the vent areas for the main penthouse, or look for a blue RFID tag to take the stairs down. When you do get to the front door, you'll notice the guard whose radio kept the front door from being openable got let go, meaning you don't have anything limiting doing the heist in stealth without ever masking up. The amount of things they adjusted for the maskless approach is very nice to see. From here, not much of the heist is different, aside from the lighting, as well as Mason potentially giving a different speech in stealth than the singular speech he had before.
I hope you realize what sort of situation you put us in. How hard could it be to get some decent hitmen on contract? This is what we do. An averagely intelligent chimp would have done a better job than you. This is making me look bad. The business is suffering. I want options right now. It was bad enough that they survived, but now they've started picking up our scent. First Shark, then Garnet's little deal down in the docks. They know something. I can feel it. They can be here any moment. Hey!
Most of what's been changed here, besides the rather obvious lighting differences, is in the minor details. To list a few examples rather quickly, there's a new side room behind where the filing room or security room could be with a body dump spot. The filing room itself has been replaced with a cigar room that has 4 extra bags of loot, increasing the heist bag total to 19. The button for Mason's panic room can be at different spots now. There's a colored switch puzzle to open the aforementioned panic room so you don't need to mask up, and I'm sure there's even more that's been changed when you look at the finer details, like the small ledge that lets you climb back into the vents when doing masked stealth. Thank you! While it might not seem like there's a lot of drastic changes on the surface, what's really impacted is the moment-to-moment gameplay. Like when you're trying to use these trees as cover and realize it's easier because their pots are bigger now, meaning you can take cover more quickly. Things like being able to use the window cleaning platform favor without being forced to mask up, having different places for the zipline when you go loud, and even little things like being able to take full advantage of the vents for bag moving and stealth with this little statue that's mostly here so you aren't forced to take fall damage when dropping through this vent. I could go on and on about changes like this, but then I'd basically be giving you a walkthrough of the heist itself, and that's no fun. You should play it. One change I'm not that big a fan of is no longer being able to steal a fake VIP invite from the delivery boy, whose timing is still just a touch too convenient for my liking, but that's getting into nitpicking, especially with the fact that there's a favor that lets you have a fake VIP invite anyway, so it's not really that big a deal. Overall, this heist was already pretty good, albeit fairly challenging in stealth because of the density of the guards, but the rework took something that was already good and made it even better, especially for the stealth side of things. Not that loud players don't get anything out of it either, the changes to the inside of the panic room aren't purely for visuals. I'll leave the meaning of that for you guys to discover yourselves, though. That, along with the fact that there's other areas to have shootouts in, and they've adjusted areas so that you have better cover, just makes the heist a much better experience all around. Of course, the hidden rework nobody expected was the tutorial, and now instead of being 4 separate environments inside the nebulous safe house that doesn't exist outside of the old tutorial, and the PUBG crossover that's already dead and gone by now, the tutorial takes place before the events of the main game as a prologue, as Houston does a solo heist on First World Bank at midnight, going through a much more streamlined way of teaching the player how stealth works, how it eventually fails, and how loud works. Needless to say, this is done vastly better than the old version where each mechanic was split into its own square, and hey, maybe now public lobbies won't go loud the moment a new player needs to get escorted out of a private area. Not to mention the presentation of the end is really well done, giving a more interesting perspective into how the narrative could be implemented into the game in the future. Plus, the cracked mask you get from this is pretty neat. Speaking of the mask, that segues pretty neatly into the new contracts for this update, which are fine, the more the merrier after all. But the bigger thing of note is when you enter the loadout menu itself, as now the entire layout is completely revamped, much like at the end of Year 1. Unlike the end of Operation Medic Bag, however, this is more than just a glorified coat of paint over the old UI that doesn't actually change anything. This time, Starbreeze went in and changed quite a few things behind the scenes to make this much more intuitive and useful. For starters, all of the cosmetic items for each of your loadouts are now on the right side of the screen so that you can focus on that whatever you're done picking your weapons on the opposite side shown on the left here. The big changes will be visible when you decide to select your weapon, as they finally added in a sorted weapon inventory showing you which weapons you do or don't own in their own separate categories. Finally, I don't need to scroll through 10 levels of a 2-box wide column just to find the Justicar again. Now, I know what some of you are thinking looking at this, and that's about duplicates of specific weapons, like having a judge kitted out one way for stealth with another copy for loud. Well, that's what this nifty little variance button is here for, allowing you to buy another copy of that weapon to kit at however you choose, no longer having 10 of the same weapon take up 10 slots in your inventory. I wish we could do the same with overkill weapons now. This menu revamp also applies to every secondary weapon and every armor frame as well, and even the masks, which are also sorted in their own subcategories for pre-designed masks or ones that you obtained via DLC that can't be customized. Speaking of armor, there's also 2 new armor frames. The 2-plate Vanguard frame, which actually ended up validating one of my older builds centered around a 2-plate setup, and reintroduces the concept of repairing trauma damage on kills with the 1 trauma repaired per kill. Granted, it's nowhere near as powerful as the original Mercenary frame passive from the launch of Armor 2.0, but I'll take it, especially since you can layer an impact plate on top of it for safely repairing it. The other armor frame added in this update is one I feel will get a bit less use, that being the 3-plate Survivalist frame, where it has the exact same passive as the 1-plate Medtech frame of giving more health for each first aid kit you use. I might have some questions as to what Starbreeze expects us to do with this one specifically, but I'm not about to look a gift horse in the mouth either, especially if there's more that can be done with new armor frames and passives in the future. If anything, it could be good for a focused tank build if you don't want the Mercenary frame's 2-second invincibility. Across the board, I think that this is a good change, but the next step now, I'd say, is adding in the ability to buy loadout slots, because I'm running out and will eventually need more for new challenge runs down the line, and also buying multiple copies of overkill weapons for their specific perks. That, as well as making the small menu for variants bigger. I literally bought and crafted every single possible armor combination, and it's a pain to scroll through whenever I want to find a very specific one. Other than menus that have changed slightly, though, is the new tab for Crimebonds, which is effectively another themed menu for where to buy things and little else. This really is the menu update, it feels like. As they are now, there's nothing here that you haven't seen before, aside from the 2 new armor frames to fill out the slots. These are okay at the moment, but it'll really come down to how well it's expanded upon in the future for me to really give a definitive opinion on it. As it is now, it's another menu. Along with the brushing up on the menus, most of the enemies also got a bit of a coloration pass as well, and while I didn't exactly like their initial look in the behind the scenes video, when you're playing against them in-game it's much more appealing to look at, as now it's far easier for you to register when there's a special enemy and which one it is when they're in a pipe-packed crowd. There's also the full implementation of the heat system in combat, and while I haven't noticed it much in overkill difficulty from what I've played outside of my one build with the shotgun, it does seem to work fairly well when you are actually bothering to push against enemies, which is nice to have. At least until the final charge, where it doesn't really matter anymore. Maybe it'd be nice to implement it to where the heat meter is still there in final charge, but filling it at that point cuts the spawning enemies in half for a minute or so. That'd be a good way to keep it around without getting rid of the final charge mechanic. Overall, though, Update 23 isn't a terrible update by any means, as it does everything that you expected it to as an update meant for making the joining process easier. However, if you've been playing the game for a while, there's really nothing here that stands out to make you boot the game up again compared to the previous updates, aside from yet another fantastic rework to an old heist. If anything, that's how much the standards have gone up at this point. The content added in this update would have been worth heaps of praise if this was done during Operation Medic Bag, but since this is consistently what Starbreeze is putting out, it's good. It's solid. At the end of the day, that's kind of all you can really ask for. That said, we need a progression update soon. An actual progression update.